Good evening, everyone. The only monarch most Canadians, Commonwealth members, and the British people have ever known has died. This was the scene outside Buckingham Palace this evening as crowds gathered to remember and mourn a queen who served for 7 decades. Queen Elizabeth II has died at age 96 in Scotland. Her oldest son automatically took over, becoming King Charles III and Canada's new head of state. Our coverage begins with CTV's chief international correspondent Paul Workman at Buckingham Palace tonight. Paul.
Omar, tonight this country is grieving over its loss as people showed their profound respect, their deep admiration, and broke into song for their beloved queen. A tribute as spontaneous and off-key as it was heartfelt. Their queen, their Elizabeth, a constant presence in British life for what seemed like forever, and now she's gone. The Union Jack lowered slowly to half-mast at Buckingham Palace, and that was the moment confirmation of the news this country feared all day was coming. Officially announced with a framed notice posted on the palace gates. A simple statement: the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. And with that, the United Kingdom began 10 days of solemn mourning.
I mean, I think people have complicated thoughts about monarchies and the royal family and empires and things like that. I think that's okay, but she's like a really remarkable figure. You know, she's been leader of this country for so many decades. It's really longer than a lot of people have been alive.
Earlier in the day, when word of her suddenly failing health buzzed through the British House of Commons, the Speaker rose to address the nation's concerns.
I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen, and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment.
By then, members of the royal family were rushing to Balmoral in Scotland to be at the Queen's side. That's when the British people understood her condition was grave. And it happened suddenly, just 48 hours after she received a new Prime Minister, looking well and smiling. Followed by a statement this morning that doctors were concerned for her health and she was under medical supervision. And in the hours afterward, an outpouring of love and respect for a queen who was a young princess when she began her reign. With the sudden death of her father, George VI, a new Elizabethan era began, the pledge of a lifetime of service.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
Over the decades, many dozens of world leaders, prime ministers, presidents, even the odd dictator came to see and be seen with the most famous woman in the world. She suffered through the painful trauma of Princess Diana's tragic death, through the joy of multiple jubilees, all highlights of her long and glorious reign. She and her husband, Prince Philip, grew old in the job together until she said goodbye to him in the middle of the pandemic, sitting alone in the chapel at Windsor, her face covered in a black mask. As a widow, cutting back on public duties, using a walking stick, delicately described by Buckingham Palace as mobility issues. Her growing frailty, evident just months ago, forced to attend the Windsor Horse Show from a sitting position, and yet there to celebrate and thrill the country once again on her greatest jubilee. Platinum, reaching the exceptional milestone of 70 years on the throne. Tonight, the Queen's closest family members are with her together in Scotland. Her grandson Harry was the last to arrive, probably too late to be at her bedside. Now begins 10 days of mourning with the lying in state and a grand funeral at Westminster Abbey. Omar.
Paul Workman outside Buckingham Palace tonight. The carefully choreographed plan for what happens after the Queen's death has been constantly updated. What's known as Operation London Bridge has now swung into action, but so has Operation Unicorn, which was created in the event the Queen died in Scotland. The plan will see a number of solemn events take place over at least the next 10 days, ending with a funeral, as we mentioned, at Westminster Abbey. Here's CTV's Danielle Hamamdjian on the tremendous sense of loss.
Most of those who gathered at the gates of Buckingham Palace this evening weren't alive when Princess Elizabeth became their queen. Yet here they are, marking a moment in history. Among them, London's black cabs who line the road leading to her London home.
She's the only constant we've all had in our lives. I just want to show me respect.
There's the institution, support for which is dwindling. And then there was the head of that institution, support for whom was remarkably high until the very end.
Well, I've never been a royalist, so I don't know why I've been so affected by it. I literally only found out a few minutes ago, and before it happened, I didn't think I would be, but I really am.
I feel like it's such a monumental moment, and I was by myself in the office, and there was not saint nor sinner to speak to about it, and it feels like business as usual out here. I can't see anything that reflects this incredible moment in history of our longest reigning monarch.
But as the hours went by, there would be no business as usual. If not her face on billboards, then simultaneous rainbows over Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. Even at 96, her death comes as a shock to many, her passing piercing through the heart of a nation and beyond.
It's just a sad day for us all today. We've all known just one queen. She's the person we've always looked up to. So it's just a sad day. Just a very, very sad day.
It was just 2 days ago that the Queen welcomed her 15th Prime Minister.
And with the passing of the second Elizabethan age, we usher in a new era in the magnificent history of our great country, exactly as Her Majesty would have wished, by saying the words, "God save the King."
My lords, pray be seated.
The reign of His Majesty King Charles III begins at age 73 with these words. The death of my beloved mother, Her Majesty the Queen, is a moment of the greatest sadness for me and all members of my family. We mourn profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign and a much-loved mother. And the King's wife, Camilla, will now be known as the Queen Consort. The heir to the throne, William, and his wife, Kate, will inherit the title Duke and Duchess of Cornwall and Cambridge. Omar.
A constant now gone. Danielle Hamamdjian also outside the palace tonight, and Canada is joining the UK and the entire Commonwealth in mourning the Queen. The CN Tower has gone dark in her honor. Official portraits of the Queen are draped in black, and flags are flying at half-mast outside provincial legislatures. Ottawa Bureau Chief Joyce Napier with the condolences pouring in for Canada's Queen.
Lowering the flag for the one who was the Queen for almost half of Canada's existence, from Louis Saint Laurent to Justin Trudeau, who sat with her several times over the last 8 years.
I'm having trouble believing that my last sit down with her was my last. I will so miss those chats. She was thoughtful, wise, curious, helpful, funny, and so much more.
The Prime Minister met her for the first time as a boy, traveling with his father, Pierre Elliott, to London. And when Trudeau reminded her in 2015 that he was the 12th Canadian Prime Minister who served under her, she fired back.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
Canada is in mourning. She was one of my favorite people in the world, and I will miss her so.
And a period of mourning begins with these words from the Queen's representative.
Until her final days, she remained engaged and committed to her country, to the Commonwealth, and to her family.
When the news broke that the Queen had died at Balmoral, people started slowly gathering at Rideau Hall.
We will always remember where we were on the day the Queen died.
Aren't we fortunate to have a monarch for all that long, that constant?
And others dropped off flowers at the British High Commission in Ottawa.
We're going through a lot of turmoil, as not just a nation, but as Commonwealth and beyond.
She's always been there, and she has lived through so much history that it's like she's sort of transcended the monarchy, and this has become one of the most important people on earth, period.
She was a fantastic monarch.
Jean Chrétien knew the Queen not only as Prime Minister, but as Attorney General when the Constitution was repatriated in 1982.
She's done it for 70 years with a lot of grace and a lot of competence, and she was respectful of everybody, and everybody respected her. So it's an enormous loss for all of us.
During the mourning period, it won't be business as usual on Parliament Hill, where politicians will be invited to sign a book of condolences, and Canadians will be able to do the same at Rideau Hall. The Prime Minister and a delegation are expected to attend the Queen's funeral in London. Omar?
Along with leaders from around the world, Joyce Napier in Ottawa tonight. Earlier today, I spoke with former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney, who shared a special and unique relationship with the Queen and reflected on Her Majesty's fondness for this country.
Well, we may not know of her profound attachment to Canada, which was, in my judgment, best illustrated by a